Alright, so back in Photoshop now. It's time to build our matte painting. So, if you remember, we had done our matte painting bash. We had our canvas that was according to our projection cam focal length, which was, I think, 19 millimeter. Now, the thing is that I will probably change that because I don't think the 19 millimeter projection cam will give me enough coverage if I use something else than flat cards. And I think I will need definitely more than simple flat cards. I would actually need some nice proxy geometry. So as you can see, I have extended the Photoshop canvas. So you just take the Photoshop canvas that you had and you just extend it quite a lot. I'm not doing anything precise right now. As you can see, I still have my original canvas with here those dimensions, and I've simply extended it, but I haven't moved the guides, and I just imported a new render of the last frame, so frame 350 in my case. And now the only thing I'm going to care about now is to extend this. So it's likely that the sky is large enough, as I said, for the 19 millimeter projection cam, but where we'll have problem, and I know it just from experience, it's for the mountains that will be right behind our midground element. So I'm just gonna first now start from scratch a little bit. I don't care too much about keeping what I had in the matte painting bash. It is really what it is. It was just like a blueprint, a template. So what I'm doing first is going back into my Nordic Nature photo pack from photobash.org, and I'm just, scrolling, looking for pictures, and then importing the ones that I think I'm gonna use. And before like getting into the detailing work, like for example the tight edge work, I'm just doing like, I guess, another type of bash. So I'm just placing some photos, and I will doing some slight color correction, even though the cool thing about those photos is that they're pretty much all lit the same way, and we've done a CG render that really matches very closely the lighting, fog, etc. So I think I can pretty much import whatever photo and it will almost match 100% in terms of lighting. So yeah, so I'm just scrolling through all those photos. In this case, I don't think I will need to use any other photo pack except for the sky, because if you remember, I want to add some sunlight, so I kind of want to break the rules here, because as I've explained in the beginning of this tutorial, the goal was to find a plate so we can match it, and it's exactly what I've done, but it doesn't mean that you cannot break the rules if you want to. Okay, so let's start to work a little bit on those background trees, and I think this photo here will work absolutely perfectly, just that we will need to extend it quite a lot. So I'm doing a quick mask here by duplicating the channel that has the most contrast, then using the curves to increase in the contrast. Now, since we have a bit of snow on those mountains and some bright spot, we will still need to paint the mask a little bit to make it more accurate. Don't want to delete bits of those mountains, we definitely need them. So you can use here simply the paintbrush tool and paint in black. You could also use the dodge and burn tool. In this case, the paint tool and painting in black just works a lot better. And it's done. So it's quite a nice process, classic 2D matte painting technique. And now I have my photo that is nicely masked, and I can start to try to see where I want to place this. And as you can see, the atmospheric perspective doesn't really work with the midground for now, but at this stage I'm not too concerned with that. I think at this stage I'm more concerned about making everything that is behind my CG render look really photoreal and correct when it comes to atmospheric perspective. But then I will try to match my whole matte painting to my CG render later in Nuke. So I don't worry too much about the fog right now compared to the CG render. Okay, just slight values adjustment. Just painting here in a clipping layer in lighten mode. Yeah, when I say I don't care about the fog, I do. I just don't care to match it perfectly to the CG render, obviously. And one thing I noticed is that the trees in my photo elements are definitely a lot less green and more red. But you will see later on that is something we'll be able to change in the CG render because we have our puzzle matte pass. So we'll be able to tweak the tree's color. So that is also something I'm not too worried about. Okay, so now that I've decided that I also want to use this photo, I'm doing the same thing. So duplicating the channel that has the most contrast. In this case, it's the green channel. Sorry, I think it doesn't really matter, to be honest, in this photo. Could be whatever channel. Then you just play with the curves and you increase the contrast. And then same, you try to paint the mask to make it perfect. Since we have a lot of snow here, it's kind of difficult to automate everything. So you got to do a little bit of that tedious work, like painting those tiny bit of snow. Still quite a fast process, I think. Once again, the fact that we use those photos that are really compatible between each other helps a lot and really will help speed up the process, because there's nothing worse than, finding one good photo that really works nice, but then having to try to find a second one somewhere else. And to be honest, that can be really a pain. I mean, it is possible. Is that this is like a personal opinion, but I really try to manipulate the photos the less. Like the less photos I can use, the better. In this case, it's almost like I'm using a single photo. I mean, it's the same location, just different photos, but from the same location. So it makes like the stitching part a lot easier. Right, so same, I'm gonna paint out here a little bit of the sky. Doing a little bit of edge work, always a bit tedious. But we're not doing concept art, we're doing matte painting, so it has to be really precise. I mean, matte painting, and I think I've said it before, is a lengthy process. So I think in my case, outside of like the 3D detailing, this matte painting part is probably the one that will take the longer. So this video is obviously a little bit sped up, because otherwise it would be way too long. But hopefully it's still very much understandable, because I'm not doing, anything really that complicated using Photoshop. I'm sure there are other people who are much better at Photoshop than me. I'm just using like simple techniques. Okay, so here I'm actually separating the sky from the mountains, because I took this photo that has a sky that I want, but also mountains. So I duplicated the sky, and I'm gonna simply paint over the mountains, so I have like a clean photo of the sky as the background with no mountains on it. And then I will extract the mountains from the duplicated layer and paste that on top of it, so I can control a lot easier the mountains without having to affect the sky. Alright, so as you can see, it's starting to look already quite nice. I mean, you can already clearly see where this is going, I think. And that is because we did, I think, a proper and successful planning phase, where we clearly look at the right references, we carefully chose what exactly we're going to do, and we did a CG render that is almost 90% there. Okay, so now I'm extracting those mountains from the sky. So once again, same technique, doing this mask, a bit tedious, but you gotta do it. Blending out the snow of the mask and also the clouds. This is usually the moment where I just put on some music and relax, because I'm not doing like anything really that requires a lot of concentration. It's more like execution to me. Here I'm using like the dodge tool to get rid of those clouds and the whites. So yeah, this is, I guess it's a fun part. It should be fun. I think we've done at this point like the most complicated when it comes to like technique and really have to think about lighting and stuff. Here it's more execution, So I just put on some music and relax. When it comes to the brushes I'm using in Photoshop, because I imagine that's a question that some people might have, well, it is really nothing complicated most of the time. It's the round brush and really basic stuff. A lot of cloud brushes, I would say, a few texture brushes, but nothing too crazy. I mean, really feel free to use whatever brush pack you want to. Whatever you feel the most comfortable with. Can we almost have a nice mask? I'm still going quite fast, I'm trying not to be too careful, and I guess this is just my way of working. I know that some people are much more organized, but if you also take a look at my layers. I mean, I'm fairly organized, I guess. Like everything is in folders. The folders are properly named, but I'm not like naming every single layer, and I'm also not creating like adjustment layers for every single action. To be honest, I would rather just because I have the experience now, I just do the adjustment and I just bake it right into the layer. And sometimes I would make like a safe copy of the layer just in case I have to go back. But with the experience now, that doesn't happen that much. So I try to be a bit tech savvy actually because a lot of layers can slow down the process. So I try to keep my PSD as light as possible, especially here since I've chosen to do a single projection, I mean a single camera projection. So that means also for this kind of shot, a very large canvas. So this is me, I guess, brute forcing the process. Some people would rather do like two matte paintings in doing the patch because when you have like a big camera move, when you need like a lot of coverage, and I've explained this before, and you will understand it later in the next part of the process when we'll do the projections. In a shot where you have like large camera move, something like this, you could either do a single projection, but that would mean that you would have a very large canvas like I have here, or what you would do is do a patch. You would do like a first projection, then when you need more coverage, you would do a second projection. But that means more files to juggle with. So in my case, I sort of brute force things just to keep the process more simple. It means that the Photoshop file will be more heavy because the canvas is kind of huge. But I have a pretty good machine, and in this case, the matte painting is quite simple. It's just, I mean, because most of the shot is CG, so the matte painting part here, there will be a few layers, but nothing too crazy, I think. So in this case, yeah, I just chose to do like a single projection and having like a huge canvas. So that means a lot less files to deal with, and it just my brain likes it better like this, I guess.